Hey everyone, welcome back to the realm. I'm Gina.
I'm Rich.
I'm Jen.
I'm Rob.
I'm Brian.
And we are back with a full length episode. I am coming to you from an undisclosed location. It's really not, it's so undisclosed. I'm in DC at a conference. But just thought we'd throw it off a little bit. Anyway, so today Brian is taking over the podcast, and I'm gonna let him introduce his topic, and I'll be pulling up some things as needed to share the screen. So if you're listening on like wherever you get your podcast, I do want to tell you that it might be beneficial to watch it on YouTube, maybe at some of the parts, just because we will be sharing our screen to play some things. Okay. All right. So with that, Brian, let's roll.
All right. With my spirit guide Jorge, I think we're all in order, and we can get this thing going. So today we're gonna get into the moon landing. Now, this is something that I'm kind of excited for because I don't know what any of you guys think. I've known Rich pretty much my entire life. And no, this is my whole life. I guess it's my whole life. And we've never actually talked about this. The most that we've talked about this was just saying for the topic for the show. So I'm interested to see what everybody thinks. I've always been under the belief that we did land on the moon in 1969. All of that is fact. We started talking at work, these things come up, and the first thing that I noticed is that anytime somebody disagrees with that, you get the crazy moniker. Oh, you're crazy. You think that we didn't land on the moon. So I'm going to start out this podcast right away by saying that I'm not a scientist. I am not a aerospace engineer. I did not stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. I
am at the Hilton, though.
All shocking revelations. I didn't know any of that.
No, see, and you've known me pretty much not your whole life, 43 years.
I thought you were an expert in your field.
Not for the moon landing. I am not. I have no scientific credential that would give me the knowledge to say concretely one way or another. Okay, so now that all that stuff is out of the way. Okay. This will be a fun, free-flowing conversation, I think. But I noticed that you get called crazy when you do that. So the older that I've gotten, the more I try to not look at that kind of stuff when somebody says something, instead of saying, you're crazy because you don't believe that. You may disagree with somebody. Everybody has their own opinions. Instead of saying that, I think it's better look at the reasons why people think what they do. If you're really interested in that, and you can start to try to understand why would somebody think that something, counter to what you think, you might learn something along the way. And at the very least, you can understand why somebody would think that way. I think that's a much better way to go through life than just throwing stones because somebody disagrees with you. So going into the moon thing, that was kind of our jumping off point when we started talking about it at work is, well, why is that so crazy to think that? Just because we're told that that's what happened. Let's take a look and really get into it, why people think it was a conspiracy. So right off the bat, a lot of the usual things that everybody brings up. I'm going to pull up the article in case anybody, I don't know, Gina, did you send that to everybody? Or do you just have it? Emails that I sent. I think I sent you stuff, Rich.
I think you might have. Gina, you're muted.
That's cool. I've only made several comments. I have just the email that you had sent to me with all of the links. So I did not send them out. So these will be like blind reactions from the rest of the crowd.
Okay. I wanted to pull up one. I wanted to kind of make it streamlined and just kind of go through just quickly. I'm not going to expound too much on these, but just to get out there, like kind of what the general things are, why people think that it was a cover up. One of the big ones is everybody says that the shadows on the moon don't match up, and there had to be another light source. And the shadows aren't parallel; they're not the way that they would be if there was just one light source. They're going in different directions. a lot of that gets explained away because you have the moon itself is highly reflective. The dust that's on there, you have a lot of reflective things. So when you're getting light, you get a lot of stuff bouncing in one way or another. Terrain is not level, so you may not get level shadows. People say that they wouldn't have survived the Van Allen radiation.
The theory with the shadows not being in line, also none of the pictures does anything have two shadows, whereas if there was a second light source, you would have more than one shadow.
Correct. So we get into the Van Allen radiation belts that people say that they couldn't get through that. I'm going to freeze on that one because that one, the answer I think is kind of wishy-washy. That
I dug into that a little bit, so I can't wait to hear.
Yeah, they just, the answer to that one is that they planned the trajectory of the rocket and of the capsule when they're going through space, that they're going to go through the outermost part of the radiation belts for the shortest amount of time to minimize any radiation that they would have had. Fine, I'm going to circle back on that one. This one I always thought was kind of silly. There's no stars in the pictures. That one is kind of silly because if you know anything about photography at all, you would understand aperture settings and how much light you're allowing in based off of the place where you're taking the picture. You're not going to see stars because they have to have that aperture cranked down so low because they have to have such a long exposure.
Exactly. Like these people that take pictures of the galaxy and everything, or the Milky Way, like they have their f-stop, that they have it set so that the exposure period is for so long, and it's taking multiple pictures over the course of hours to even get that. So yes, you can't just go outside and take a picture. Although, Rob, your pictures of the northern lights were pretty impressive.
As Brian had mentioned, the moon surface is really reflective. It's like iron, aluminum, and glass. So that's why it's so bright in the sky. So it's very similar to trying to look at the stars if you were in a baseball stadium. You're not going to see them. It's light pollution. Right. And you're standing in it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I get
that. People mentioned the flag, that it's waving in the wind. That's not the case. The flag one is one of them where I'm like, this one you can just see. They have a rod going on the horizontal part of the flag to hold it out, because if you didn't, it would just hang there, and that doesn't look great for a picture. So all of those, like, those are a lot of the big ones. This one, if we really went to the moon, why haven't we gone back? The answer, funding fell through and people didn't care anymore, yada yada. That one I'm going to circle back on some more. So those are a lot of the general things that people seem to point to, and there's all kinds of scientific reasoning why all of those can be explained, but that's no fun at all to do that. So it's much more fun if we talk about the outside things that we just look with our very rudimentary, uninformed minds. I think is much more fun. The first thing that I kind of think of when I read all of the explanations, there was another one. I dug real deep into the photos, and there was somebody who was talking about that people have taken photos that were taken on the moon, and then they run them through some of the software filters, and you can see that the noise levels are very erratic, indicating that Photoshop was used on things. And then this person went on to give the website that the government has, that you can go and you can download the original scans of the original negatives, which they've done now. So they got all the original negatives that were on the moon, and they have those that you can go download, but the files are really big. Like some of them are a gigabyte for one picture, and websites generally won't grab those photos to use because you want a small photo that loads quickly. So that's what people generally see. And this person took one of the raw photos from the negative that has that really big file, put it through the same filters, and you find out that those noise levels aren't there then. It's just things were changed to get that photo to fit onto a website. So that shows that that photo hadn't been manipulated, which I say, yes, it hasn't been manipulated, but that doesn't mean that that photo was taken on the moon. So I'm bringing that up as an example for some of these things that they say, well, science says that this is what happened, or there's no stars because we used the aperture had to be stopped down. That's true. Doesn't mean that it was taken on the moon. So right away, some of the things that we start looking at is the why haven't we gone back to the moon? The answer always is Vietnam was going on. People got tired of the moon. And that seems weird. If you just look at an exploration, the way that exploration for centuries has worked, you never go backwards. You always go forward. It's strange for us to have gone to the moon and then only go into near Earth orbit. That's all that we do now. We go several miles above the Earth. That's where the International Space Station is. That's where the space shuttles went. That's where everything that we send up now, that's where it goes. It comes back down. Just in near Earth orbit. That seems like backwards. We were mentioning somebody going to see the Titanic, another billionaire trying to go see the Titanic. That would be like when Ballard and his team found the Titanic, which, by the way, fun fact, they were not looking for the Titanic when they found it. They were actually working for the United States government on some sort of classified project for something, and they stumbled upon the Titanic. So that was a happy accident. But we didn't find the Titanic, leave it there. People still to this day want to go down and see it. People are trying to still go explore the depths of the ocean. We didn't stop. We don't do one thing and then stop. Columbus didn't sail the ocean blue, and then everybody went, well, it was done. Seemed like he
Right.
came up with some pretty important stuff, but I guess that's it, and they wipe their hands of it. You keep going. So it's odd that we stop doing that because funding and all of that. Now, if you want to look at the motive, because I have a theory that is just a theory. It's not, I will give my final thought on it at the end of the episode when I let everybody give theirs. But a theory is we're in the midst of the Cold War against the Soviet Union. We know that there is a space race. And I always go back to the end of, well, because I'm the movie guy, I always go back to the end of Die Hard with a Vengeance. When we get to the climax and Bruce Willis says, what's better than stealing all of America's gold and blowing it up, making everybody think you did. So if we want to win the space race and we want to get to the moon before the Soviets, what's better than doing that? Making them think that we did that and accomplishing the same goal, while at the same time maybe accomplishing something that we were more interested in, near Earth orbit. It's interesting that after the moon program, the Apollo missions, we went to a reusable spacecraft, the space shuttle, that was designed just to go into near Earth orbit, taking payloads and doing all of that kind of stuff. So my theory would be, is perhaps we knew the moon is that's a tall goal. It's hard. It still is hard. We still try to land rovers on there. I think 2 of them within this past year tried and failed. Didn't work. But they had to have known that that space around the Earth is going to become very, very important for a lot of reasons, for geopolitical reasons, which it is. We have satellites, spy satellites, all kinds of things going on. To this day, we have China who sends up unmanned vehicles doing things up there that we don't know. We had the news a couple of months ago that Russia was using some sort of a space something or other that could be a satellite killer in near Earth orbit. And there was a whole press conference from, not sure who it was, if it was the head of the NSA. It wasn't Blinken. It wasn't the defense secretary, but there was a whole thing. So if in the 60s, they want to really get a grasp on near Earth orbit, you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. We can send people up in a capsule. We can have them doing everything they're doing, just going around the Earth, getting very good at mastering that aspect of space, while at the same time letting the Russians think we went to the moon, killed 2 birds with 1 stone. That would explain the space shuttle and the just trying to do those things, because otherwise that's going backwards in technology. That doesn't make sense that we go As far as we do, like, we put people into a capsule, shot them off into space, do the Roadrunner slingshot maneuver around the moon, have one piece detach from something else, land on the moon, guys get out, walk around, fly back up, reconnect to the other piece, and then they come back home. And we were able to do that from 69 to 72, 7 times with no problems except for Apollo 13. They never made it to the moon, but everybody came back okay. It's a hell of a batting average for something that seems incredibly difficult to do. So my working theory was just that maybe we were taking time. We were sending guys up. They were really going up in a capsule. They're just doing near Earth orbit stuff, come back down. Maybe for Apollo 13, they tried it. They were like, shit, we're actually going to try it this time. They tried it, shit went bad, and they went, fuck, this is really, really hard. So then they did a couple more of the other missions, and then people lost interest in it, and they were moving on to their next thing, which would have been a reusable space shuttle to use in the future. So that's kind of the, like, that. If you want to say it was faked, that seems to make the most sense to me of how that would be. Or more probable is I could definitely see them trying to go, maybe going, but some of the stuff they have to fudge. Like, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle of what we're being told. There's another picture, Gina, in the email that I sent you. It is, I'll tell you which one it is. It's the Michael Collins photo.
Let me pull that up because
it's going to be on the
right
moon. That one, yeah. So anybody who's on YouTube, if not, and you're on your computer, just pull up Michael Collins spacewalk photo faked. Put that up, and it'll give you what you're looking for. There's a picture of Michael Collins. In one side, you see the photo. You see him in the training apparatus that they were training for. Then the other side of the photo, it's clearly the same picture, but NASA flipped the photo, took all of the training stuff out of the background, and they were putting that out into publicity things that was the actual spacewalk that Michael Collins did. The reason now that's been explained, and they said, well, because the photos that were taken weren't usable, and they wanted the public to be able to see what Michael Collins did while he was up there, which is fine. I understand that. But you don't do yourself any favors to kind of calm down people's ideas that you may be willing to fudge other things. Now, I know probably a big jump to say that they could do that, but if they're willing to do that, it's not inconceivable that they would do it with other things. There's also been plenty of stories. There's somebody I know who knows somebody who works for NASA as a digital graphics designer, and NASA uses graphic designers on a lot of things. And when they get a picture of something that isn't clear or it's not what it should be, they will have graphic designers clean that photo up, add the things that should be in there. It's trickery. Just show us what you're actually taking, but they're willing to do those things because they want a clear picture for the public to see, which is fine. Another thing that stuck out to me is when they broadcast the original footage of the moon landing in 69, the camera that was used was developed by Westinghouse, and they spent like $2.5 million in 60s money to develop a camera that could be used on the moon. They attached that camera onto the lunar module. So when Neil Armstrong would climb down the ladder, he'd pull a little lever, the little arm would come down and the camera would be there, but it was mounted upside down before they went, which, just mount the fucking thing right side up. You guys are the best and the brightest. I feel like you could have alleviated this before we left Earth's atmosphere. But it was something like that camera when it was taking all of the recordings of them on the moon. It was something like it was in 10 frames per second or something. It was not the standard frames per second and resolution that we would see on our TV screens at that time. So that signal from the moon was brought to Houston, where they were able to take that footage and put it on a monitor and then convert it by filming that monitor with a regular television camera. And then that's what was disseminated out to everybody's homes that they watched. So they were filming a monitor of the actual footage, which again, that's kind of weird. Just let everybody see the footage that's being filmed up there. If it's in 10 frames per second, who gives a shit? Let people see what was going on, but it needed to look good for TV. We needed to have that. So that's just, it's weird. It's really strange. And when you think back to where we were in the 60s, and you get to where we are in 2024, I think people are much more skeptical now in general. And maybe that's because we have the internet, we have social media, we have
more people are talking.
We have a 24/7 news cycle where we can see things. In 1969, if Walter Cronkite told you that that was the news, that's what happened.
That was the news. Yeah.
That was the news. You know, that's what happened. Now there's a couple more things that Gina, if you can share your screen again,
Sure.
let's play a couple of those videos. Let's start with the wires video, because one of the things that people say how they faked it is that they had the astronauts were on wires, and that's why they're bouncing along the way they are. And
I think it's this one.
it looks different kind of each time they landed. You see them moving a little bit differently. But if you're on YouTube, you guys can see this. Gina is going to show us. Just watch how this astronaut falls down and how he gets back up.
Okay. Do you want me to go before this point that you have marked for a couple seconds?
Sure.
Okay. So I'm going to back it up a little bit. But at the 2.7, 2 minute, 7 second mark, I think is where you had marked it.
Yeah.
Does this have audio that you also want to share?
You don't have to. It doesn't.
Okay. All right. So here we go.
I know we're a podcast, so we should have audio, but it's more of a visual medium for this one, everybody. Sorry.
All right. And you can describe what's going on for the people that are just listening.
Okay. You're not necessarily going to see the wires. Now, there are a couple of times, if you watch the videos of them bouncing around, you'll see their antenna that's on the back of their packs, and you'll kind of see a reflection off of those. Every once in a while, you'll see that same kind of blast of light, that reflection towards the top that kind of gets a ping, which is a little interesting because there shouldn't be anything like that at the top of the screen unless there was something up there.
Are you guys able to see this now?
Nay.
No.
Black.
There's nothing. Oh, it's just a black screen.
Now do you guys see it?
See it? Yes.
Okay.
We see it, but nothing's
There we
moving.
go. But
I haven't hit play yet, so
yeah,
I'm gonna
your
do.
cursor's moving now, so that's a good thing.
Yep.
Okay, can you guys see it full screen now?
No,
No, that's the problem. We can't do full screen. Can
and that's
you see
fine.
it?
That's fine like that.
Fine, yeah.
Yeah. That's
All
fine,
right, you can
perfect
see
like
it
that.
here. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're at
perfect.
1 minute and 55 seconds,
Yep.
so we can get started now.
Yeah, and that's fine because we can see them bouncing around and fun. So there's some of their rehearsal where you can see them hooked up to the rigs.
So what is this rehearsal of? They're just practicing what it's going to be like being on the moon?
Yes, they're practicing what it should be like. Now watch this guy fall, okay? He fell. Now watch him get up. And whoop, I just pop right up. That's right. I've never been on the moon, so I don't know if that's how I would be able to get up.
Yeah,
But-
that's
Looks like it's in backward motion, like he fell down.
yeah. I mean,
Right?
let's go back and look at that again because
Yeah.
that is so weird how he's trying to get up.
Yeah,
and they replay it several times. It's like
he doesn't make a base. He kind of bends
it's almost like he's pulled up.
Yeah, it's almost right, and
Yeah.
yank, and he's good.
Yeah, I mean that is a good point. Shannon was saying, well, for those of you just listening, my friend Shannon is here in the undisclosed location with me. But I mean that thought crossed my mind too. There's no gravity there, right? So like, would it be like that? We don't know what it would look like to stand up in something that's no gravity. I mean, the closest thing they have to doing that is when they do the zero gravity on the airplanes, to practice, and they take you. So I don't know. I mean, maybe his body would float.
Is that
like,
movement affected by different cameras used at different times, different frames per second or whatnot?
Yeah, I'm
They
not
back
sure.
with different cameras or how they're doing it. So
Brian, I'm not sure
they
if you.
appear different just because it's jerky, like old silent films.
Yeah, that's true. And Brian, I don't know if you heard, like, because there's no gravity, like, would it look like that then? Maybe it would look like he was kind of floating up.
Absolutely, that's the question. Now, the question would also be if there's no gravity, or there's, whatever,
it's low gravity,
1/16 or whatever it is of the Earth's gravity. Yeah. If he's getting up that way and he has momentum coming back, wouldn't he keep going backwards?
And Shannon just asked, well, how would he fall in the first place?
Yeah.
Well, it has to be weighted. The suit does have to be weighted.
That's true. Yes, because they do have to bounce around like that. So interesting.
Now, have you guys gone back and watched any of the footage from any of them? Just go on and just take a look at some of the footage of some of the moon landings, and then
we watched a documentary that showed a bunch of that stuff. Pretty much the same stuff here that you're showing. So I've seen it before. Yes.
Yeah, I've watched quite a bit on this topic as well.
Okay. Let's hit those other two videos, Gina.
Sure.
Let's start with that. Let's start with Neil Armstrong and his cryptic message that he gave.
Okay. And I'm just going to troubleshoot just to make sure that we have sound.
Remember when he punched that reporter?
That was Buzz.
Oh, was it? Oh, damn.
Yeah, that was Buzz. He'll use his old man strength and punch you. Which I like. I like that in my astronauts.
Yes.
It's a quality to have.
It's a real American.
So this one we do want audio, Gina. All right, so this is Neil Armstrong at the 25th anniversary of the moon missions, I think it is. And they're giving a press conference, and I'm not sure who he's addressing. I'm not sure if it's does it say who this is? It doesn't really matter. They're doing a press conference, and it's the 25th anniversary of the moon landing. Neil Armstrong is the first man to land on the moon, and this is the message that he gave on the 25th anniversary. Go, Gina.
Here we go.
Time. On the 25th anniversary of the event in 1994, Neil Armstrong made a rare public appearance and held back tears as he spoke these brief cryptic remarks before the next generation of taxpayers as they toured the White House.
Today we have with us a group of students among America's best. To you, we say, we have only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers.
Hey, what the fuck does that mean? Peel back the layers of truth's protective layers?
It's like an onion. It's got layers.
I mean, I thought the moon was made of cheese, but I guess it's more like an onion.
It's like an onion.
Can't peel cheese.
So now let's do the Buzz Aldrin interview. Now this one is particularly weird because I feel like he's answering a question and then quickly realizes what he's saying and changes gears. So this is Buzz Aldrin. He was at I don't know if he was at a school and the kids were asking him questions with the help of the teacher. And this is a question that a lot of people say everybody cuts it off for the whole context. So we'll let him answer the whole question and everybody can hear his complete statement based off of the question that's asked. But it's a little strange. Go ahead, Gina. No, we're not getting them. That's weird.
Yeah, no, because I heard it earlier today because that's one of the ones we tested.
Wait a minute. Gina's at her undisclosed location. I think the secret is out. I think they're pulling the plug on us.
Probably.
I think we're
too much.
Yeah. Oh, this is a good one too because he really looks like.
Is that where the little girl asks him why we haven't been back?
Correct. He starts to answer, poops himself, not because he's old, but because he realizes what he's saying, the man is a hero, regardless of what anybody thinks.
He doesn't punch her, does he?
Oh my God, that would have been amazing if he punches her. That'd be a Family Guy skit.
Yeah.
Well, that's worse than the time when Buzz Aldrin had to answer that little girl's question.
Now parents don't like us.
No.
Well,
Oh no, what'd you do, Gina? You broke it.
You broke YouTube.
I mean, he's all decked out in his
His
Mars
members own
t-shirt.
moon jacket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You notice
Well-
how Buzz is spelled just like Buzz Lightyear? It's the same font.
It's almost like they named Buzz Lightyear after Buzz Aldrin.
Yeah. That sneaky Disney.
And
Pixar.
modeled him to look like John Lasseter. But hey,
Right?
who knows if that's true?
What I heard.
Working on that. I'll go on to
Mhm.
just a couple more things. Why we haven't gone. We're supposed to be going back now. So we have new Artemis missions. We were supposed to have one that was going to be happening in 2025 for us to get back to the moon. That's been pushed back. Everything has been pushed back now. But we have new missions that are supposed to take us there. So one, it's going to be awesome when we try and it doesn't work, because then everybody's going to go, see, we should have done what we did in the 60s, which is what I'm about to say now. The Boeing Orion capsule that they want to use for this, they sent one out into space around the moon, came back, and they said that they just weren't satisfied because the heat shield wasn't holding up properly. Now I ask you, if you had a heat shield that worked on the same general shaped vehicle, a capsule that's shaped like a bell, why not just use the same goddamn heat shield that you used in 1969? How could we possibly be doing something now where we go, yep, it's just not holding up? We have disc brakes on cars. When we make a new car, they don't try to reinvent that wheel. We know that disc brakes work really well, so we use those. We don't try to go on to something else and then go, yeah, we can't produce this car yet because we're just not there. Use what works. That's odd. And one of the funnier things when I was going through some of the information on the Orion capsule is, guess what they added to the Orion capsule that they didn't have in the Apollo program?
Drink colder.
No, fucking radiation lockers. Radiation lockers that the astronauts can put themselves in if the radiation gets too high. We didn't have to worry about that in 69 or even in 72. We didn't have to worry about the radiation because we're really good at finding the proper trajectory to get us there. We can just get through the little, it felt like Vinny that time, it just rides on the edge of its wheel like this. They're real good at threading that needle. But now fast forward to 2024 and they put in radiation lockers because we want to make sure that the astronauts are protected from all the radiation. That didn't seem to be a problem before.
Maybe they didn't think about it though. Maybe it was just something where now they're more I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. They're more in tune with it and they know that it's something they should do. Maybe back then
It's
they
like
didn't
we're back.
think about
It's
that.
like PPE. You know how they have
Sure.
PPE in the 60s to how they do it now.
Yeah, maybe.
I also
So do you
think that if they're going to do a different design, like for the heat shield, maybe that particular design didn't work. Because what I always think about is how many satellites we have sent out that are on the other side of the universe still sending back video. So they made it through there with their electronics.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure we can make it through with our electronics again. And
You
when
would
you
think
see
so.
the trajectory of some of them satellites, I mean, they're all over the place and they're spot on with their math. So
It's more the
stuff has made it through the radiation without getting damaged.
it's more the meat suits that we're wearing that I think the radiation should be more of a cause for concern for.
Right. But if they shield the electronics on the satellites, they had to shield the capsule itself.
I
He's
was
not talking
reading
about the
an
radiation. He's
article.
talking about the heat shield.
No, I'm talking about the radiation through the Van Allen radiation belts.
Me too.
So apropos to this, there's somebody who I work with who kind of listens in at lunch to some of our conversations. Sometimes he called me over about a week ago and he said that his son unprompted, his son, who is working on a major, I think it was bionuclear radiation or something. And he goes, I got a call from my son the other day, and he said to me, I don't think we went to the moon. He goes, digging into all the radiation and what we had available in 1969 and the levels of radiation that he was like, I'm kind of wishy-washy on that one. That seems like that should have been a problem.
Yeah, unfortunately, the sound was definitely, we troubleshooted it earlier and we were able to hear it, and unfortunately it is not working now, and I'm not sure if it's just my internet connection here or what's going on, but I can try to play it a different way and you guys just let me know if you can hear it.
So this is Buzz Aldrin addressing a child who's asking him a question while he's at a school. And she asks him a question of why we haven't been back to the moon since 1972.
Okay, here we go.
Why has nobody been to the moon in such a long time?
That's not an 8-year-old's question. That's my question. I want to know what I think I know. We didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen. So in the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it going. Money is a good thing. If you want to buy new things, new rockets, instead of keep doing the same thing over, then it's going to cost more money. Other things need more money too. So having achieved what the president wanted us to do, and then what thousands, millions of people in America and millions of people around the world. You know, when we toured around the world after we came back, the most fascinating observation was signs that said, you did it. Not just us, not just America, but we, the world, different countries. They felt like they were part of what we were able to do. And that made us feel very good.
Okay. So I've always only heard that little part of that, so I wanted to hear his whole answer. His whole answer is no fucking better than
It's almost unintelligible. Like I don't even know what the fuck he's saying.
Yeah, he starts to stumble, and like BJ said, he tries to backtrack. He's like, oh shit, what did I just say? And then he tries to ration what he said, and it just makes it worse. He's like, it's like dumpster fire going on there.
It's a horrible answer. It doesn't even make sense.
When you see him start to give the answer, his first reaction, by the way, is that's not a question of an 8-year-old. Like he was kind of like, shit, I can't believe I'm getting asked this. Then he goes, because we didn't go. That's the way that it happened. And if you want to know how to do things in the future, we have to know why they happened or and then he stops, he pauses. There's like a audible pause for about a second and a half. And then he goes, money's why. And then he gets back on track of saying we need money and funding, and kind of says that, and then gets into the feels. We did what the president wanted, and we all did this, and it was great, and it was happy and rainbows. That's a weird answer to give.
Right. And the whole world was felt they were involved.
Like it's just
because he said that it didn't happen, but when they came back, like I was just really confused by that whole thing.
And if anybody really wants to watch something weird, go back, and it's on YouTube. You can find the press conference from '69 after the Apollo 11 guys got back, and just watch their whole press conference. It's a little weird. Like you see some of their reactions and some of their answers, and it's strange. But again, I haven't been to the moon. I don't know what that experience would do to you if you did do that. What I do know is when my hockey team scores a goal, I'm happy as shit. These guys landed on the moon. Not one person was hooting and hollering. Not one person said, I hope this suit works. They were all very cool as cucumbers, which I guess is why they got the job.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of have to be preserve the oxygen and all. You know what this reminds me of though? Like just when we talk about all this stuff, it reminds me of how like you experience something and you happen to like not have a camera in that moment and it's like, okay, let's do it again. Let's do it again. So you recreate the moment. So it actually happened, but we didn't get enough. We weren't able to like get the proof that it happened that we needed. So then we had to recreate it to get the proof.
I agree.
So that's what, just like, I don't know. That's just what it reminds me of, like modern day, like staging of photos, like even with our selfies or, somebody crossing the street, like, oh, that was cute. Do it again so I can get it on video,
Yeah, let's keep going around with that. Rob, what's your take on the whole thing?
I love a good conspiracy, and I want to believe. And you'll watch some UFO footage, and you're obviously looking at something metallic, but they're saying it's swamp gas. But this is metallic. It's obviously not gas. It's a solid. I see both sides of the evidence for the moon landing, and I watched a bunch of the conspiracy theory angles, and I've watched the contradictions to it. But it's almost more cut and dry, like not like swamp gas, but like, hey, that makes sense. So I'm kind of on the fence, but I do feel like we made it and we landed, but we may have doctored some stuff so it looked better because we wanted to look like number one. Obviously we wanted to win the space race, but trajectory through that belt. Basically you're just taking a satellite and putting people inside of it, so it's the same protection. You still got to protect electronics. So I don't really think they would have the issue to get through it. I mean, sure, it's dangerous, and that's why they put in the proper PPE if they're going to put those new chambers in. So, if you could come up with something, that one specific thing to convince me either way, but I kind of feel that we made it, and there's just some wishy-washy information. But I do believe we did not go back for money as a reason, because we were doing the same thing over and over. We weren't doing any new experiments or anything scientific. We were just repeating ourselves.
Yeah.
At the same time, if you watch other photos from satellites that happened after the moon landings, where on the dark side of the moon, they believe that they found bases and other structures. I'm just saying that was another theory that we didn't go back because of aliens told us, don't come back, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
And Transformers Dark of the Moon was just on today, so it was very apropos. We're covering this.
Yeah, and the other thing that I had seen, what I went down the rabbit hole of, one, I wanted to know what it took to like get to the moon, like how fast did they need to go? And then back in that day and age, so they landed on the moon, like how did they take back off again? Because like they need so much, they need to like come up with all that energy.
They have less gravity. They had thrusters.
Right.
Yep. And even only part of the capsule went back up.
Right. Because there was the command, there was, another person that was in the orbiting in the other
One
part
of them
of it.
Never touched the moon.
But just when I was just taking a look at it from just like a general, like just average Joe, like what would you ask? Like what questions would you ask? What things would you wonder about? So those were the things I started looking up just to like get the basics, right? And then I'd read like you have to go like over 25,000 miles per hour to like make it like to the moon and like through that barrier safely. So I don't know. I just found that super interesting, and just like how the whole thing took place and where we were then, and the fact that we had the technology, and then of course the recordings. It's like we can barely get our cell phones to work like in the mountains, but we have this clear like I don't know, I guess understanding. And the other thing that they are like clear, transmission from space to here. And then the other thing that they were talking about was that there was, I guess, I don't know if it was like a rover or something that had taken pictures, or if it was a satellite that had went to the portion of the moon where it had landed, and you can see exactly where they had landed, like what was left behind, and supposedly like the trail that the astronauts had walked on the surface, because they said there's no wind, so like they moved the dust. I don't know how I feel about that either, because it was
Google
just, I don't know.
Moon.
Primary school kids can do that on an iPad now if they wanted to. They can drop that.
Yeah,
shit.
so I don't know how I feel about that, but I think it happened, or I want to believe that it happened, right? There's just so many good points on both sides, but I want to believe it happened,
Nobody
and we
brought
just
up Stanley Kubrick.
No, the Kubrick stuff is just kind of fun. Like that's kind of fun. If you go back and watch The Shining and you see the, Apollo sweater and all that kind of
Yeah.
that's kind of fun stuff. Before I get to you, Jenny, there was another thing that I wanted to drop in, because people usually will bring up that, well, if it was a cover up, you're telling me that all of those people who worked on this were involved and they kept the secret. And I say absolutely not. It goes back to anybody who's familiar, professional wrestling reference, to the Montreal Screwjob with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon. And people go, was that a work, or was it real? And I go, I tend to believe that if it's Vince McMahon and Bret Hart come up with this whole angle that they're going to work, everybody else around them, it's real to them. All you need is two people who are involved in what's actually going on, and it's real for everybody else. If you have the people, if they did stage this, if they did do some chicanery, you don't need every single engineer or every single person who was working at NASA at the time to be in on it. You have people that could know what's really going on, and everybody else is going about their day doing the things that they're supposed to be doing because it's real for them. So that one, I think, always, when they go, everybody would have to be in on it, that's just silly. That's not how you would do something. You would have the people who need to know, and everybody else around them in that orbit, pun intended. Yeah, thanks, Rob. Everybody else, it becomes real to them at that point. I wanted to mention that because I forgot that earlier because we were having some audio difficulty. But
yeah, sorry about that.
Jennifer, Lord, Jennifer, Lady. Yes, Lady
Lady Finkel.
Okay.
I've blurred them.
Okay, so right, wrong, or indifferent, because it's really hard to be able to say what's right and wrong here. But I feel that what people saw on TV was fabricated. I do believe that we've been successful getting to the moon. And I do believe that we've been there. Oh, my light just went off. I do believe that we've had some success in that area. Yeah. But I do believe that what people saw on TV was either recreated or created for the TV. And that totally creates all kinds of conspiracies. I agree that, the cost is probably a big factor. I was reading an article, and for this new initiative, it's $93 billion projected for this initiative. $93 billion. And what are we trying to accomplish? I know somebody said, we keep going back and doing the same thing, but that's my thought. I've seen maybe too many YouTube videos that are full of conspiracy theories, and I'm getting kind of swayed in that direction. But I do think that we were successful in getting there. I think that what they did was try to come up with something for the public to see. And so that's my thought. That is my thought. I also was really interested because when I was watching all these different things about gravity, started thinking about other things, for example, the pyramids, and how did all these ancient pyramids get built. And all of a sudden I'm like, well, what if the gravity was different at that time? You know, I mean, there's all of a sudden I start going in many different directions, and just about anything is possible, just like the realm. Infinite possibilities.
Infinite possibilities.
But I mean, honestly, I don't think that what people saw in the television was real time, true footage. I really don't think it was.
Lord Morley, what you got?
First of all, the pyramids were built by the Freemasons. Anyway, my take is, and this kind of falls into a lot of the things we've talked about, you know, where you have stuff on one side that makes a lot of sense, and then you have stuff on the other side that makes a little sense. You can have an argument both ways, and I think both sides have valid points, and both sides have ways to debunk them. I believe, this is my opinion, I haven't given much thought about it. Clearly not as much as everybody else. I don't, it is what did we go? Great. If we didn't, I don't care. Okay. That's just me. I don't think too much about it, but it's my assignment for the week. So this is my thought. I think we went, but I think what we saw on TV was fake. I think they did that because of the space race. I think they wanted to make sure they were first, or we were first, I should say, to the moon. And what better way to do that than to broadcast something to everyone that we made it to the moon, here's the proof, and the story. Whether they went before or after that, I don't know, but I think we did. I think, kind of like Jenny was talking about, I think there's some truth to it, but I think there's some trickery to it. Because in one of the documentaries we were watching, Kennedy was saying how around that time, you know, we're going to go, we're not ready. But somehow 6 months later, we're there. I don't know how you can go from not being ready to go to 6 months you're broadcasting something on live TV that we're on the moon.
Maybe they were ready, but they just were missing that one piece of that formula.
Could be.
That's all they had to do. 6 months to figure that out.
That's my take. I think what people saw on TV was a fabrication, just for show, you know, for all the glitter, lights, and glamour, and you know, just like the magician, you know, this is going on over here. Don't pay attention to what's going on over here, type thing. And obviously it worked to a certain point, but once you start asking the questions, as we've seen here with Buzz and stuff, and the other things you guys or other things Brian pointed out when they got back and the debriefing, there's a lot of things that you can question, but is it just because people are questioning it? Maybe the guy just misspoke. Maybe, you know, I think people are, this is a great debate. This is one of the great debates of all time, I think, of did we or didn't we? So I think people are going to pick it apart if they want to, or then there's other people that say, quit talking about it. It happened. It's all nonsense. The fake stuff is nonsense. It's not true. So I think there's both sides of that coin there, but
well, if I can interject real quick, I just was looking something up. So it says that this is on Wikipedia, in 1969, Apollo 11 was the first crewed mission to land on the moon. There were 6 crewed landings between 1969 and 1972 and numerous uncrewed landings. All crewed missions to the moon were conducted by the Apollo program, with the last departing the lunar surface in December of 1972. Then it goes on to talk about like uncrewed landings, and then it talks about soft landings, and really like Russia supposedly had the first hard landing, which like was not manned or whatever, but it sounds like a total of like 12 astronauts have walked on the moon. So that's something I didn't know, because like you, Rich, I guess I never really paid attention to it. It's like I was told about it. I was told it happened. I thought it was cool. And I guess I really didn't care one way or the other if we had or not. Other than the fact that, you know, some movies they portray, you know, like building colonies on there if we had to ever, you know, leave the earth or whatever. I think that's about as far as I've ever thought about it.
So for the new Orion missions that they, or the Orion, it's the name of the capsule, for the Artemis missions that they want to do, their whole idea behind those is that they think if they can land at one of, I think the South Pole, they think that there is water there that they could get. So if they can land there and there is water there, that means that you have fuel because they can make the fuel necessary to get to Mars. So if we can set
Yeah.
something up on the moon, you have your way station to then go from the moon to Mars, which is a hell of a lot easier because if you leave from the moon, you don't have an atmosphere that you have to get through. You don't have to expend as much fuel as you do to go through Earth's atmosphere. That's why Elon Musk is diligently working away in his laboratory or laboratory for his Starship rocket. So all that makes sense. Like all of that seems like a really good idea, and we should be doing that. I literally just thought of something as we were talking about the TV with Rich and Jenny. I mean, the interesting thing is we all seem to be on the same page. I think the truth is somewhere in the middle. I want to believe that we may have gone there, but I also think that there was shenanigans that were used to get that message across for a PR reason. And this just popped in my head when we're talking about JFK and Nixon. They have their televised debate in 1960, and that's one of those debates where if you were to read the transcript of that, Nixon should be your winner, but people were watching it on this newfangled television and they were able to see the two candidates, and you have Nixon, who's a sweaty mess, and then you have this handsome MFer JFK on the other side, who's sounds great, and people saw that television was an important medium and it was new. So there was probably a great deal of thought put into showing. It's a visual medium now. Because let's say there was no TV, let's say there was no broadcast of them on the moon, and it was all audio. Would people believe it less or more if it was simply audio transmissions and being told, here's what happened without us visually seeing it?
I think they would have believed it the same, only because up until that point, that's all they had. Do you remember when War of the Worlds came out and everybody thought that was real?
And then everybody found out it was fake.
Then everybody found out that it was fake, that it was just a story.
Right.
But so I'm saying, like, I feel like they would have believed it just the same, just purely because that's up to that point how they were, people were getting their news. So I don't think that would have, personally, I don't think it would have made an impact.
Okay. There's no wrong answers here. There's no wrong answer. That's
Thanks for the pep talk.
It was just
certainly more convincing if they have the visual. I mean, absolutely. If that's all you have, you're going to believe it just as much as you believe everything else you hear on the radio. But it is more convincing if you have the visual.
I have a question too.
Shoot.
Now, when, I guess maybe it was said, maybe nobody, maybe you don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. When did it all come about that people started thinking was fake? Was it right away, or was it after people started having more technology and more knowledge of filming and all that stuff that people started going, wait, these things don't add up? Because at the time when it's televised, it was probably more like we're talking about, like if it was just audio, people probably believe it because, that it has to be just like the internet. If it's on the internet, it's got to be true,
Right.
Back in that day.
I believe it happened early on.
Did it?
Like not too long after that.
Yeah, there was some guy on some of the debunking things that I was going through. There was some guy who wrote a book. He's written a second one since, and I can't remember the name of it. Something like "We Didn't Actually Go to the Moon" or some shit like that. And this guy wrote a book, and he worked. Yeah, he worked for a very short time. Worked at a Rocketdyne, and claimed that he saw some memos that were from like 1958 or 59, and it was saying that NASA, which I don't know if NASA was even around then, so he's full of shit. But he was saying that this memorandum was basically saying that they had kind of crunched the numbers on the probability of being able to go to the moon and land somebody there, and it was something like infinitesimal, like 0.0000017% chance of that being successful. So then he was like, "Oh, this is a bunch of bullshit. We never went." But he has since put out a second book where he has to refute some of his own claims and change the things that he thought happened. But that person was being credited as somebody who was trying to bring it into the mainstream that we didn't actually go. But again, I think it's interesting that we're all kind of on the same page, that
Yeah.
we all think that hopefully we went. I think we all want to believe that we went. But that also there was probably some things that were done to hammer that point home so it was easily digestible to the general public. And that kind of makes sense. I still think it's a hell of a batting average to be able to be that successful. When you look at the shuttle missions, we lost several people in 2 shuttles. And for the moon missions, the ones that were sending people to walk on the moon, we sent every one of those out and back, and everybody was okay. 13 had their problems and they didn't make it to the moon. They just went around, but everybody was able to be returned home safely. That is some kind of a feat that seems improbable, and that might be why it's so hard for some of us to wrap our minds around. But I hope that we went. I like to believe that we went, but I also think that there were some other things that were going on to try to sell it to the public. I think the real interesting things are going to happen once the Artemis missions attempt to go, and hopefully those are successful, because if we have problems with those, that's where a lot of the questions are really going to arise again, and people are going to be quite sus if we have problems.
Yeah, how can you do it in the 60s with limited technology and now you can't do it? Yeah, that raises some questions.
Right.
I
Like,
mean,
how are we viewing all that? And sometimes we can barely, our cable doesn't work half the time. It's amazing to me.
for some of our younger listeners who I know it seems like ancient history, computers in 69 were not what you would think it would be today. They
Yep.
were reel to reel tape that they were using, and those computers were just doing basic arithmetic, right? I mean, they're doing very simple computations that were needed.
Yeah.
And we have more computing power in our cell phones than are anywhere close than
Yeah.
what the Apollo missions. So you would think with the advancement in technology and just overall the advancements in science of things that we know, this should be an easier feat. So we'll see.
Well,
See.
just to let you know that NASA formed, the agency opened October 1st, 1958.
Oh, there you go.
And I'm not so sure that we're not going because we can't. I feel like it's still just a financial thing. Our phone runs off of apps. The apps do all the work. The phone just transmits it. So there was a lot of those reel to reels working
Yes.
to get that to the moon. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
It sure is fun though. I
It
mean,
is. I love a good conspiracy.
it's one of the more fun ones because you can pick apart and look at so many different aspects of it and try to break it down and form an opinion. It has entertained us at work at lunch for several months now and made the year go by very quickly. So it's been a lot of fun talking about it. It's one of those things that it's going to go on into perpetuity. There's always going to be the questions, and especially for us in the paranormal field, I feel like all of these good conspiracies, like especially this one, because you can look at footage, you can look at things, and it gives us a chance to use some critical thinking that I think we apply when we're doing investigations and we're looking at paranormal footage and evidence, and we try to pick things apart. I think that it's one of those things that once you start getting into this field and doing things, you're kind of drawn to those types of conspiracies or those types of things, and you really want to start digging into things because it helps in general. and I'll close this out the same way that I started, that be kind to people. If people have a differing opinion than you, or they have some sort of belief on something that you don't agree with, try asking them why and do some digging, look in some information. It'll help give you a well-rounded view of things. It'll, at the very least, give you a little insight into what somebody else thinks, and maybe you'll learn something along the way. And I think the moon landing is a perfect example of that. Don't call people crazy. Ask them why they think we.
I agree with you. Like that saying, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. I mean, we all have differing opinions about a lot of things, and that just can go across the board for many things. It's the same thing with like the flat Earth. That I've watched things on the flat Earth, and I actually no, we're not. We're going to be kind. We're going to be kind. I do not believe the Earth is flat, but what I do think is that I can understand, based on when you watch the things that are put out there in favor of it, or proof that that's the case. It is very compelling if you're somebody that is easily influenced, right?
So weak-minded.
Not weak-minded. Remember, we're being nice.
Oh, yeah, right.
We're being nice. No, the thing is you're right, though. It's like, just even if we don't agree, just listening to the things to understand why people believe the things that they do. Like, we don't have to agree with them. And there's going to be a lot of people that don't agree with us on things that we say, and that's okay. We'll just keep losing fans. I'm just kidding.
I'm trying as hard as I can to alienate as many people as we can.
You've done a great job this episode not doing so. So I'm proud of you.
Even when we talk about spirit box shit and all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't call somebody crazy if they believed in said videos that we talked about. That's up to each individual to do that.
Right.
But I can have my own judgment on what somebody else is disseminating, while still understanding why somebody would want to believe it. I can totally understand why people would want to believe that, but at the same time, I can call out bullshit. It doesn't mean that
exactly.
Any negative attached to somebody.
I agree with you. Well, this was a great episode. Thanks for all the hard work you put into this. Brian sent several links. I will put all of it in the show notes, and we can, start posting that to our social media, Instagram, and our Facebook page, so everybody can get on there. Just so you know, we're getting close to the end of our season. So by the time you are finished with this episode today, we will have 3 episodes left, I believe. Yeah, 3 episodes left. Yeah, for this season. But then we're going to gear up. We're going to go over some evidence, try to get in a couple investigations this summer, release some evidence reels through the summer, and then and we are going to be hitting the ground running for our Scaretober and our fall season. So Scaretober is coming up. We're going to have lots of stuff, which we'll talk about on the last episode of the season. We'll kind of give you a rundown of what to expect next season, but we are going to be interviewing several people. So I can't wait to tell you guys all about it. So with that, anybody have any final words? We good? This was good. Thank you, Brian. Round of applause.
Thank
you. Yay.
All around.
Good job, everybody.
All right. Well, have a good night, and tell you listeners, thank you. We are 24 countries strong right now with our listeners. So super exciting. So just keep along with the journey, and we appreciate everybody's support. So
all right.
ciao.
Peace out. Big balls.
Balls.